I'm going to be continuing with Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, Book 2, Part 5. Next, we must consider what virtue is. Since things that are found in the soul are of three kinds, passions, faculties, states of character, virtue must be one of these. By passions, I mean appetite, anger, fear, confidence, envy, joy, friendly feeling, hatred, longing, emulation, pity, and in general the feelings that are accompanied by pleasure or pain. By faculties, the things in virtue of which we are said to be capable of feeling these, for example, of becoming angry or being pained or feeling pity. By states of character, the things in virtue of which we stand well or badly with, reference to the passions. For example, with reference to anger, we stand badly if we feel it violently or too weakly, and well if we feel it moderately, and similarly with reference to the other passions. Now, neither the virtues nor the vices are passions, because we are not called good or bad on the ground of our passions, but are so called on the ground of our virtues and our vices. And because we are neither praised nor blamed for our passions, for the man who feels fear or anger is not praised, nor is the man who simply feels anger blamed, but the man who feels it in a certain way. But for our virtues and our vices, we are praised or blamed. Again, we feel anger and fear without choice, but the virtues are modes of choice or involve choice. Further, in respect of the passions, we are said to be moved. But in respect of the virtues and the vices, we are said not to be moved, but to be disposed in a particular way. For these reasons, also they are not faculties. For we are neither called good nor bad, nor praised nor blamed for the simple capacity of feeling the passions. Again, we have the faculties by nature, but we are not made good or bad by nature. We have spoken of this before. If then the virtues are neither passions nor faculties, all that remains is that they should be states of character. Thus we have stated what virtue is in respect of its genus. We must, however, and this is part 6, not only describe virtue as a state of character, but also say what sort of state it is. We may remark then that every virtue or excellence brings both into good condition the thing of which it is the excellence, and makes the work of that thing be done well. That is, for example, the excellence of the eye makes both the eye and its work good, for it is by the excellence of the eye that we see well. Similarly, the excellence of the horse makes a horse both good in itself and good at running and at carrying its rider and at awaiting the attack of the enemy. Therefore, if this is true in every case, the virtue of man will also be the state of character which makes a man good and which makes him do his own work well. How this is to happen we have stated already, but it will be made plain also by the following consideration of the specific nature of virtue. In everything that is continuous and divisible, it is possible to take more, less, or an equal amount, and that either in terms of the thing itself or relatively to us. And the equal is an intermediate between excess and defect. By the intermediate in the object, I mean that which is equidistant from each of the extremes, which is one and the same for all men. By the intermediate relatively to us, that which is neither too much nor too little, and this is not one nor the same for all. For instance, if 10 is many and 2 is too few, 6 is the intermediate, taken in terms of the object, for it exceeds and is exceeded by an equal amount. This is intermediate according to arithmetical proportion. But the intermediate relatively to us is not to be taken so. If 10 pounds are too much for a particular person to eat and 2 too little, it does not follow that the trainer will order 6 pounds, for this is also perhaps too much for the person who is to take it, or too little. Too little for Milo, too much for the beginner in athletic exercises. The same is true of running and wrestling. Thus, a master of any art avoids excess and defect, but seeks the intermediate and chooses this. The intermediate not in the object, but relatively to us. If it is thus, then, that every art does its work well, by looking to the intermediate and judging its works by this standard, so that we often say of good works of art that it is not possible either to take away or to add anything, implying that excess and defect destroy the goodness of works of art while the mean preserves it, and good artists, as we say, look to this in their work. And if further, virtue is more exact and better than any art, as nature also is, then virtue must have the quality of aiming at the intermediate. I mean moral virtue, for it is this that is concerned with passions and actions, and in these there is excess, defect, and the intermediate. For instance, both fear and confidence, and appetite and anger and pity, and in general pleasure and pain, may be felt both too much and too little, and in both cases not well. But to feel them at the right times, with reference to the right objects, towards the right people, with the right motive and the right way, is what is both intermediate and best. And this is characteristic of virtue. Similarly, with regard to actions, there is also excess, defect, and the intermediate. Now, virtue is concerned with passions and actions, in which excess is a form of failure, and so is defect, while the intermediate is praised and is a form of success. And being praised and being successful are both characteristics of virtue. Therefore, virtue is a kind of mean, since, as we have seen, it aims at what is intermediate. Again, it is possible to fail in many ways, for evil belongs to the class of the unlimited, as the Pythagoreans conjectured, and good to that of the limited. Well, to succeed is possible only in one way, for which reason also one is easy and the other is difficult. To miss the mark easy, to hit it difficult. For these reasons also, then, excess and defect are characteristic of vice and the mean of virtue. For men are good in but one way, but bad in many. Virtue, then, is a state of character concerned with choice, lying in a mean, that is, the mean relative to us, this being determined by a rational principle, and by that principle by which the man of practical wisdom would determine it. Now, it is a mean between two vices, that which depends on excess and that which depends on defect. And again, it is a mean because the vices respectively fall short of or exceed what is right in both passions and actions, while virtue both finds and chooses that which is intermediate. Hence, in respect of its substance and the definition which states its essence, virtue is a mean with regard to what is best and right and extreme. But not every action nor every passion admits of a mean. For some have names that already imply badness, for example, spite, shamelessness, envy, and in the case of actions, adultery, theft, murder. For all of these and such like things imply by their names that they are themselves bad, and not the excesses or deficiencies of them. It is not possible then ever to be right with regard to them. One must always be wrong. Nor does goodness or badness with regard to such things depend on committing adultery with the right woman at the right time and in the right way, but simply to do any of them is to go wrong. It would be equally absurd, then, to expect that in unjust, cowardly, and voluptuous action there should be a mean, an excess, and a deficiency. For at that rate there would be a mean of excess and of deficiency, an excess of excess, and a deficiency of deficiency. But as there is no excess and deficiency of temperance and courage, because what is intermediate is in a sense an extreme, so too of the actions we have mentioned there is no mean nor any excess and deficiency. But however they are done, they are wrong. For in general, there is neither a mean of excess and deficiency, nor excess and deficiency of a mean. Part 7. We must, however, not only make this general statement, but also apply it to the individual facts. For amongst statements about conduct, those which are general apply more widely, but those which are particular are more genuine, since conduct has to do with individual cases, and our statements must harmonize with the facts in these cases. We may take these cases from our table. With regard to feelings of fear and confidence, courage is the mean. Of the people who exceed, he who exceeds in fearlessness has no name. Many of the states have no name, while the man who exceeds in confidence is rash, and he who exceeds in fear and falls short in confidence is a coward. With regard to pleasures and pains, not all of them, and not so much with regard to the pains, the mean is temperance, the excess self-indulgence. Persons deficient with regard to the pleasures are not often found. Hence, such persons also have received no name, but let us call them insensible. With regard to giving and taking money, the mean is liberality. The excess and the defect, prodigality and meanness. In these actions, people exceed and fall short in contrary ways. The prodigal exceeds in spending and falls short in taking, while the mean man exceeds in taking and falls short in spending. At present, we are giving a mere outline or summary and are satisfied with this. Later, these states will be more exactly determined. With regard to money, there are also other dispositions. A mean magnificence, for the magnificent man differs from the liberal man. The former deals with large sums, the latter with small ones. An excess, tastelessness, and vulgarity, and a deficiency, niggardliness. These differ from the states opposed to liberality, and the mode of their difference will be stated later. With regard to honor and dishonor, the mean is proper pride. The excess is known as a sort of empty vanity, and the deficiency is undue humility. As we have said, liberality was related to magnificence, differing from it by dealing with small sums. So there is a state similarly related to proper pride, being concerned with small honors, while that is concerned with great. For it is possible to desire honor as one ought, and more than one ought, and less, and the man who exceeds in his desires is called ambitious, the man who falls short, unambitious, while the intermediate person has no name. The dispositions are also nameless, except that of it the ambitious man is called ambition. Hence, the people who are at the extremes lay claim to the middle place. And we ourselves sometimes call the intermediate person ambitious, and sometimes unambitious, and sometimes praise the ambitious man, and sometimes the unambitious. The reason for our doing this will be stated in what follows, But now let us speak of the remaining states according to the method which has been indicated. With regard to anger, there is also an excess, a deficiency, and a mean. Although they can scarcely be said to have names, yet since we call the intermediate person good-tempered, let us call the mean good-temper. Of the persons at the extremes, let the one who exceeds be called irascible, and his vice irascibility, and the man who falls short, an inirascible sort of person, and the deficiency irascibility. There are also 3 other means which have a certain likeness to one another, but differ from one another. For they are all concerned with intercourse in words and actions, but differ in that one is concerned with truth in this sphere, the other 2 with pleasantness, and of this one kind is exhibited by giving amusement, the other in all the circumstances of life. We must therefore speak of these 2, that we may the better see that in all things the mean is praiseworthy, and the extremes neither praiseworthy nor right, but worthy of blame. Now most of these states also have no names, but we must try, as in the other cases, to invent names ourselves, so that we may be clear and easy to follow. With regard to truth, then, the intermediate is a truthful sort of person, and the mean may be called truthfulness, while the pretense which exaggerates is boastfulness, and the person characterized by it a boaster. And that which understates is mock modesty, and the person characterized by it mock modest. With regard to pleasantness and the giving of amusement, the intermediate person is ready-witted, and the disposition ready-wit. The excess is buffoonery, and the person characterized by it a buffoon. While the man who falls short is a sort of boor, and his state is boorishness. With regard to the remaining kind of pleasantness, that which is exhibited in life in general, the man who is pleasant in the right way is friendly, and the mean is friendliness, while the man who exceeds is an obsequious person, if he has no end in view, a flatterer if he is aiming at his own advantage, and the man who falls short and is unpleasant in all circumstances is a quarrelsome and surly sort of person. There are also means in the passions, and concerned with the passions. Since shame is not a virtue, yet praise is extended to the modest man. For even in these matters, one man is said to be intermediate, and another to exceed, as for instance the bashful man who is ashamed of everything, while he who falls short or is not ashamed of anything at all is shameless, and the intermediate person is modest. Righteous indignation is a mean between envy and spite, and these states are concerned with the pain and pleasure that are felt at the fortunes of our neighbors. The man who is characterized by righteous indignation is pained at undeserved good fortune. The envious man, going beyond him, is pained at all good fortune, and the spiteful man falls so far short of being pained that he even rejoices. But these states there will be an opportunity of describing elsewhere. With regard to justice, since it has not one simple meaning, we shall, after describing the other states, distinguish its 2 kinds, and say how each of them is a mean. And similarly, we shall treat also of the rational virtues.